When AMD launched their Zen architecture CPUs, we did an episode about what we could expect from their new lineup and whether Team Red could finally be a serious competitor to Intel again. If you missed that one, you can check it out up here, but come on back afterwards because it's been over 2 years now, and it's time to have a look at how Intel has started to struggle against a resurgent AMD. In fact, from late 2017 to late 2018, AMD's market share increased by 3.8% on desktop, 3.4% in servers, and 5.2% in notebooks. And seeing as Intel is the player in all of these markets, anything that AMD gains reflects a loss for Intel. But why exactly is this happening? Well, for a long time, AMD was forced into a strategy of competing on raw price to performance, as for a long time, they simply couldn't make any chips that could come close to the performance of Intel's offerings, forcing them to cut prices. Intel, by contrast, could, to a point anyway, charge whatever they wanted, as they didn't have any real competition at the higher end. This allowed them to make much more margin. All of this changed, however, with AMD's new Zen architecture. And although Ryzen lags a bit behind Intel in some performance metrics, notably gaming, AMD, having spent so many years operating on lower margins, took a fundamentally different approach to their CPU design that worked really well. To save R&D, they opted for a modular design that could be scaled up and down more easily, and then for their higher-end many-core products, they even used multiple smaller chiplets to decrease manufacturing waste. This, along with aggressively low pricing, started to eat into Intel's dominance. As it turns out, users are happy to give up a small amount of performance for a significant cost savings. But AMD just making a decent processor for a change and pricing it competitively is only part of the story here. Intel has also had their own very public issues transitioning to their 10nm manufacturing process. Now, according to their original roadmap, they should have been finished years ago, but they still only have a few 10nm SKUs on the market. But why does that matter? Well, here's the thing. Whenever you hear CPU aficionados talk about a certain number of nanometers, they're referring to the transistor sizes on the CPU die. Smaller transistors mean that more of them can be packed onto a given area, increasing performance as well as power efficiency. That means that it's very helpful to make your CPUs on a smaller node. And while AMD hasn't had much issue getting their transistors down to size, Intel has struggled. Unlike AMD, who contracts its fabrication work to facilities that specialize in manufacturing different kinds of processors for a variety of clients, Intel, who owns their own fabs, is more or less trying to figure everything out on their own. It also helps to remember that for some time now, Intel's transistor density has often been higher than that of AMD, as numbers like 14nm and 10nm are actually just estimations. So a 10nm Intel chip might actually have a distance of closer to 8 or so nanometers between transistors, which makes further shrinkages even more challenging. So this means that Intel has spent about the last 4 years trying to squeeze more blood from the stone of their poor 14nm or plus process with only small incremental performance improvements to show for it. It's been a period of clear stagnation for Team Blue compared to their impressive track record for the prior 35 or so years. Adding insult to injury, Intel's struggles with 10nm have also been a contributing factor to the ongoing shortage of Intel CPUs, particularly at the lower end. Because the company has been devoting resources to figuring out the 10nm problem, it hasn't been able to crank out enough 14nm chips to meet the ever higher demand for entry-level devices like Chromebooks and low-power laptops. Combine this with the fact that Intel places a higher priority on high-end chips due to their larger profit margins, and AMD has stepped in and sold tons of its own lower-end CPUs to fill the gap. On the subject of Chromebooks, Intel has additional threats on the horizon too. Qualcomm, best known for their Snapdragon mobile processors, is trying to push a line right now of laptop CPUs optimized for power savings. But While Intel is facing a number of issues at the moment, it's important to remember that they are still the market leader in CPUs by a very wide margin with plenty of cash in the bank, so they've got time to turn it around. Intel is exploring GPU technology quite aggressively, and they're also looking at new manufacturing techniques for both 10 and 7 nanometer chips. It's just not clear when we'll see them in large numbers. In the meantime, though, we will be carefully watching to see if Intel eventually loses all of its market share to its competitors, but my money's on them figuring it out instead of going the way of MySpace. Speaking of MySpace, our sponsor, FreshBooks. FreshBooks' cloud accounting solution allows you to work anywhere thanks to the FreshBooks mobile app. You can create professional-looking invoices on the go, you can snap pictures of your receipts so that you don't lose track of them, and you can stay on top of important conversations. You'll also never miss an update, so you can see when a client has viewed their invoice or when an invoice has become overdue, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can start your 30-day free trial of FreshBooks right now at freshbooks.com/techquickie. We're gonna have that linked below. So thanks for watching, guys. Like or dislike, check out our other videos, leave a comment with video suggestions, and don't forget to subscribe and follow. Maybe even ring the bell if you're feeling super nice.